There were 4 fouls by the receiving team on the play. During the kick, holding, number 82, that penalty's declined. Holding, number 36, that penalty's declined. During the return, holding, number 38, that penalty is also declined. During the kick, unsportsmanlike conduct, return team for blocking out of bounds. That 15-yard penalty will be enforced from the end of the kick. The number was 82. It's first down.
It's raining flags, and we're not proclaiming hallelujah about it, as Uncle C. Tom and I discuss the trigger-happy officiating on Thanksgiving and more in this edition of Noise of the Boys podcast. Cowboy Nation, what is happening? Live and in living color, we bring to you the Noise of the Boys podcast, a Dallas Cowboys Homer exclusive. From our studio at HQ1, I am your co-host, color commentator Matt Longoria, and with me as always, my right-hand dude, sitting to my left, Uncle C. Tom.
What's up, everybody? Matt and I are just two true blue, over-the-top, die-hard fanatics that come together to help you celebrate those wins, but still find those silver and blue linings in the losses. We are here to make some noise about the boys. How we feeling today, Matt Long?
Man, I am just lucky that we can use it as an excuse. The fact that Thanksgiving occurred since the last time we posted a video, as well as Black Friday. Here we are recording on a Saturday. Having had some time to recover, man, I'm still not feeling all that well in anticipating the game that is before us in 4 days. If you tuned into the last podcast, we did say that we had a 10-day break unbeknownst to us. We did not. We do play again on Thursday, and so we beg your pardon on that one.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, too, because we all know how desperately we need a long break, get some of these guys healthy, some of these guys, coaches, come back from COVID and all that stuff. So it's a tough stretch every year in November for Dallas, and every year we act like we're surprised that it's here. So just got to get used to it and try to gut through it.
Man, heading into Thanksgiving, the Cowboys are statistically the most penalized team in the league this season. So what can you make of the officiating in this game? And do you pin this loss on the Cowboys or Sean Hockley and his crew?
Let's not get completely carried away. I try my absolute best at all times to not complain about officiating. But obviously this is an anomaly. This was one of the worst officiated games I've ever witnessed. Prior to this, I had only seen a game with 20 penalties, like actually watching the Cowboys and other teams and stuff like that. This was ridiculous. I mean, I've got a stat here from at Hellman DC. David Hellman works for the Dallas Cowboys. 16 flags today. This was at 6:07 p.m. Okay, so 20 minutes remaining in the game, and 16 flags for 162 yards. 107 of those yards against Dallas. That was with 20 minutes remaining in the game. So to think that for the last 20 minutes of the game, there was an additional 12 penalties that were accepted, it's just mind-boggling. And it's a tough pill to swallow considering everything that we saw in that game from the officials. It was pathetic, and it was very disappointing. Obviously, Dallas could have played a lot better as well, which we'll get into.
It seems to me that there were whispers before the game from some inside people realizing that Sean Hockley was calling this one, but not only that, realizing that Dallas and Vegas are two of the highest penalized teams in the league. One could anticipate this one being a trigger-happy officiated game. I even texted you, I want to say in the first quarter, when it appeared that we recovered a fumble in dramatic fashion, and Sean Hockley and his crew decided to overturn that one. That one was questionable to me. At that point, I know it was in the first quarter. I'll pin it right here on the screen. But I did text Caleb and say we need to talk about officiating this game. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize what was to come. But we all know how that one turned out.
It's ridiculous. That call was so bad for so many reasons. I was so upset about this call in particular. Obviously, I don't want to say that this is the reason that Dallas lost. I don't think that. I think there are other things from the referees that contributed to it. Also, Dallas's play. But this play in particular, it was a big play as far as trying to establish early momentum, which is something that this Dallas team is built to do. Get takeaways and try to score a lot of points. So that play being turned over, I didn't understand what was the point of letting the play out just for them to call it incomplete on the field. So once again, just missed calls. Honestly, that's more missed calls that should have gone one way. It's pretty, common. We see it called that way, and for some reason it's called a different way. It just kind of seemed kind of funky the way that they called the game. It was very
subjective.
Very, very subjective. I didn't agree with a lot of the calls going both ways. There was actually a play that benefited the Cowboys, gave us an automatic first down, where before they called it, I was like, man, are we just going to call a penalty on every single play? This is ridiculous. I mean, what did we have? 8 penalties in the first quarter between both teams?
Yes.
You usually see a lot of games that have just a little bit more than that for an entire game. Like 8 penalties combined in the first quarter. You just kind of knew how this game was going to go.
So I hate to call coincidence, but Mr. Sean Hockley happened to be the same referee that officiated the game in Tampa Bay, where one could argue that controversial offensive pass interference call late in the game that ultimately set up Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a walk-off field goal. It just so happens that one of the last plays of the game basically decides the outcome, and that happens to be the defensive pass interference called on Anthony Brown.
I just hate, it's so frustrating when you watch a game and the officials determine the outcome of games. It drives me crazy in absolutely every single sport, calling it so close to the chest. And I would almost prefer if it was like established that way, early on, like we're going to call everything real close, but it seemed inconsistent throughout the game, which is why it was frustrating. So you need to call it ticky-tack, or you need to call it like you're not going to call anything. Like, what's it going to be? The inconsistency is why it's so difficult for the players to adapt to the way that people are calling the game. They don't know. If you're not consistent, how can anybody get better? How can anybody try to learn how to play the position, according to the rules, things of that nature. So I hated how this game was officiated, and it's disappointing whenever officials determine the outcome, and not just in the Cowboys game, but like when we're talking about the Dallas Mavericks or, things like that, like silly ticky-tack calls that probably should have just been like no calls and let them play on. That's what I hate to see.
Yeah, you definitely want to see the boys play, and it almost felt like the referees had a vendetta against the NFL and decided to make it the worst watched game, also the most viewed game thus far this season. That's just my humble opinion. I do also have to say that, that's a lot of penalties, man.
28 flags for 276 yards was the tally.
And I hate to pin the referees as to why we lost. I look at our performance as a whole. I think that given what we have as far as injuries and people that are missing, key players that are missing from this team, I thought we did a good job. Not all of these penalties were crap. There were definitely some legitimate ones. There were definitely some trash ones, but we still did get it called on us nonetheless. So no excuses. We took that L. Hoping getting some key guys back is gonna help Dallas look like the team that went on a 6-game run. And
just one last, we could talk about penalties probably all this episode, honestly, because there was just so many, really bad calls. And obviously we want to stress the importance of us saying that Dallas didn't play its best ball, but crappy officiating when you're trying to get your team back into a game is really frustrating. So that's why we're so upset about it. I think the biggest thing is if you look at the team stats, right? You go to the penalties at the in-game tally. It says, they had 14 for 110. We had 14 for 166. So if you're looking at that and you didn't watch the game, you're like, oh, okay, well, they both got 14 called, just like Dallas. They had some more yardage, a little bit more yardage is all. But it's just like it was coincidentally timely, for when those flags were being called. The Raiders actually went 3 for 13 on third down today, but the box score won't tell you that the 5 that were converted due to penalty. So there was a lot of flags being called when we were making stops. So it's easy to point the finger at defense and say, well, they gave up 36, like they got to play better than that. But it's also because all of the third down plays that they were, stopping on and making plays on were getting converted regardless. So it was hard to kind of get into a groove. And that's why the referees, that's why I feel like they determined the game.
And one could definitely play devil's advocate and say that Cowboys needed to be a little bit more mindful of how they were defending the pass in terms of how many penalties they drew. But I don't have anything to say to those people, to be honest with you. I feel like exactly that. When stops needed to be made, the Cowboys made them. And more often than not, when that happened, you saw a yellow flag hit the turf. Very, very, very frustrating game to watch, to say the least.
Yeah, to say the least. All those referees, I hope that we don't see that the silver and blue lining here is hopefully we don't see that referee crew very much moving forward, and we don't see that referee crew in the playoffs, because we know as Dallas Cowboys fans, we do not want to suffer another 2016 Green Bay kind of game where we could have had a couple of calls go our way, a couple of things swing our way. Maybe we're walking into a conference championship game. So I'm a little bit nervous about the playoffs if we have to see that crew again, for sure.
But in the path to get to the playoffs, the Cowboys need to buckle down and stay the course. Yes, we have lost 3 of our last 4, but there's still plenty of opportunity to respond from that, especially with getting some key guys back like DeMarcus Lawrence, Amari Cooper, who should be practicing next week, but leading up to Thursday's game, and he should be active for that game, as well as CeeDee Lamb. These are some key pieces. And going into the Raiders game, I would have to say that I really believed in our guys and the guys that were willing to step up to the plate, like with Noah Brown and Cedric Wilson. But I think it showed, and it was completely evident why Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are so important to have on this offense. They are definitely a key reason why we're efficient. I think that will show up in the Saints game. Not too sure what the Saints injury report looks like. I don't know if Kamara will be playing at this point. I know we'll find out later in the week. But I think that
sticking to the Raiders game, if there's one thing that we should take away from that game and be excited about, is that our quarterback performs well under pressure, from behind, on plays where you have to have it. And I know that he had a poor throw in overtime, and if you want to pick that one out, that's fine. But I saw a few throws that he left on the field that he usually would make. Maybe if Amari Cooper and CD are out there, that changes things. But I saw Dak absolutely dropping balls in a friggin' bucket.
Yep.
The one to Michael Gallup down the sideline was a
couple to Michael Gallup.
Absolute beauty, and that's why you miss Michael Gallup, is for pretty much that route in particular. Dak and him have that down so good. So when Amari comes back and CD comes back, and that kind of changes the way the defenses are going to cover our guys, look out. And seriously, I really do think that those 2 receivers have that big of an impact on this team and on how well Dak Prescott performs as well. Even though we did see him play very, very well without them, maybe he took it to the next level with the other guys in there.
I think you have a solid point when you say that maybe it's a little bit different of an outcome if Cooper and Lamb play, because when you have those guys that you throw it in the vicinity of them, you kind of do expect CD and Cooper to make those plays, and maybe you're right. Maybe it does change the course of the game. Maybe they do make those grabs, but that's yet another reason why they're so important.
Maybe that helps you feel more confident in the running game as well. I mean, we had 20 carries, so not like it's not like we completely abandoned it, but not very efficient. Neither guy could really get, huge plays on the ground. And I think that is also a byproduct of not having receivers like CD and Amari out there to scare that defense. Because if you don't have, if a defense doesn't trust your passing game,
Right.
they're going to stop the run and make you one-dimensional in the passing
Right.
game. That's basic football. And so when you're going against guys like we had, as opposed to what we normally have, that's going to impact the running game. And people that don't know football will tell you that that's not true.
I think that's really important to bring up. If you don't know a whole lot about football, I think that you still understand the phrase establish the run. But to your point, it's very, very hard to do that if the defense knows that they have no problem and have no respect whatsoever for your passing game. They're just going to load up that box and trust in their corners to do their job and smack that football out of our receivers' hands. And they've done a really good job of that the last few games. You can tell that the past two opponents' defenses has shown up to simply stop the run and make Dak Prescott and those receivers beat us.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't tell you how happy I am to have Michael Gallup back, but I think it's becoming evident that we've seen a few games where Michael Gallup has had to step up as the number one. And I know he's coming off of an injury right now, but he doesn't look like a guy like Amari. That's not who he is, and that's okay. But that's why Amari is so important. And anybody that was saying to trade either, get rid of Cooper or get rid of Gallup, I think it's nonsense because they complement each other very well. It's good to have both of them. I'm glad we still have both of them. I'm glad that Amari just has COVID and he'll be, he'll work his way back and he'll be fine. He'll be ready for the playoffs and things like that. But this game, man, tough pill to swallow. You hate to see those overtime losses. They just break your heart, man.
And we hate what that does to us. If you can't tell, it definitely affects our energy here in the studio at HQ1. I will say though, moving forward, I mean, we're not down for the count. Okay, I can almost guarantee you that. And I definitely want to believe that's true. I do want to switch gears a little bit, be a little bit less gloomy, and talk about and highlight some of our playmakers this game, and Tony Pollard and Michael Gallup, Dak Prescott, Cedric Wilson, and Micah Parsons. Let's talk about Tony Pollard a little bit. You can just really appreciate a guy where a lot of teams would definitely start this man, and the effort that he puts in as an understudy to Ezekiel Elliott.
Can't say enough about how much I love TP, bro. TP is an absolute baller. He shows that burst. He complements Ezekiel Elliott perfectly, and the reason you like him is because he can do it all. He got 10 carries in the running game, 3.5 average, not great, not terrible, but I mean he was pretty much the rushing game. Zeke wasn't even on the field that much. Receiving, he caught 4 balls for 32 yards, and then he also obviously had the big highlight touchdown return. So he shows you what he's capable of doing for your offense, and I love TP. I don't know if he's RB1 just yet. I think that Zeke is still RB1. He brings a lot more to the table as far as being more well-rounded. He's very versatile. And we know what Tony Pollard is, but that's why you want both of them. You don't want just one. And anybody that wants to get rid of one of them in favor of the other, that's silly. You want to keep guys that complement each other well, like they do, on the same team. Because, like you said, it makes the team more versatile. So TP is a great addition to this team, and I'm all for seeing him more involved on offense.
Definitely a pace changer. He definitely changes the game when he comes in. I feel like every time the football's in his hand, he's making a play with it. Notably, the play of not necessarily the play of the game, the play of his game would be that 100-yard kickoff return. Nobody saw it coming, but in a game where it felt like the offense really struggled to get it going and needed to see like a spark play, that might have done justice and jump starting the offense, because as we know, they did come back to tie it up late in the fourth, give us a shot to win the game in overtime.
Yeah, I mean, some really solid players here, and I want to be able that we do talk about Zeke and the injuries that he's battling, but Tony Pollard definitely had himself a ball game, man. I thought I kind of want to talk about Dak a little bit. Dak showed you who he is. Dak is going to fight to the very end. That's something that we've already talked about on this podcast. Dak is going to fight like every single play like it's his last play, and that is the reason why we have an opportunity to tie the game up, at 30 points and at 33 points, because this guy never says die, and he's always going to go out there and he's always going to do everything he can to make plays in order to keep his team in the ball game. Whether it's down 30-0 or 30-28, this guy's going to give it his all, and he proved that today. So
definitely a situation where you can't blame the quarterback in a loss like this. Dak showed up and performed. He definitely evaded sacks when it definitely looked like he was going down to make plays. Yeah, he did get brought to the turf once, but he made the plays and the throws necessary. I know he definitely did have some throws get away from him, some that he would definitely love to have back, specifically the one in the fourth quarter.
And few on some drives where we had I think it was 4 or 5 straight 3-and-outs. I'm sure he'd like to have some of those back as well.
Definitely, and not only that, but you miss guys like Coop and Lamb when you see drops. We didn't have nearly as many drops as we did against Kansas City, but we had drops nonetheless, and it always seems to be so timely on third down.
Yeah, the amount of DPIs on third down was just ridiculous, and we don't want to harp too much on the penalties. Obviously, we need to talk about that 3rd and 18 penalty as well, but trying to find the positives. I thought that Dak played well in crunch time, which is what you want to see from your quarterback that you're paying that kind of money to, and that's what I felt so confident with the ball in his hands on that 2-point conversion. I want it to be a pass play almost every time, honestly, because I know that Dak he's very accurate quarterback. He's gonna find people. Obviously, it doesn't always work out, but he made the play at the end of the game, and that's all you can ask of.
Yeah, definitely gave us a shot to win. Dropping him in the bucket in the likes of Michael Gallup, who I also want to highlight. The guy, you can tell that he definitely struggles to outshine guys like Coop and Lamb, but definitely held his own here in this game alongside Cedric Wilson. Both of them went for over 100 yards receiving. So they definitely stepped up to the plate. Big chunk plays that gave the offense some life whenever you felt like they were going to boys to bed again, so to speak. But yeah, I can't talk about Dak enough. He definitely responded in the way we thought we would, but we just showed up on the wrong side of it again. Yeah,
and the whole elite quarterback talk, there is an argument to be made that Aaron Rodgers might have won that game. So to me, I don't know if Dak is, top 1 or 2 like I thought he was. I thought he played really well, like I said, but there's arguments out there that the elite, the absolute best, are going to win that game regardless. And, championship teams are going to find ways to win that game regardless. And while some of that may be true, I still felt like our team played well enough to win the game despite the anomaly amount of penalties that we saw. So I think there's definitely reason to be happy, especially since when you consider that we're still 2.5 games up on the division. With Philadelphia losing to the Giants today. Anybody that's worried about the Giants, anybody that is still worried about the Eagles, you can pretty much put that to rest. If it ever did come down to us having to play Philly to win the division, we're going to stop them. So, and that's facts.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I do want to talk about our injuries, the guys that we're missing. DeMarcus Lawrence, you've got Gallimore, Gregory, Wilson, Lamb, and Cooper. I mean, how can you take these guys out of this team and expect them to produce and get wins? Man, these are key pieces. It's like they complete the picture. So good teams do find a way to win. I mean, when you're run very thin and you're really forced to dig deep, you can't really blame them for taking some L's, and only fell short 3 points.
Yeah, well, another play that doesn't really get talked about, I'm sure people are freaking out about it as far as our kicker not making it, but the decision to even put the kicker out there, I didn't agree with that call. I think that's going to be a key play that you can look back on and say, man, I don't know if that was necessarily the best decision, and I don't know if he would have made it had it even had that big of a bearing on the way that the outcome of the game came out. So what I would like to have seen is, because when you kick a field goal and you miss it, I mean, that's a really long distance of a kick. It goes, the ball is put on the new line of scrimmage for the opposing team is where the kick was placed. So we just gave them better field position. I don't see a situation where putting Dak on the field and putting the ball in his hands when we need a big conversion on 4th and 7 like that at that particular spot on the field. I think I would rather have Dak on the field and try to get positive yardage.
Yeah, I believe we fell upon some statistics that prove that Greg Zeurline's playing a little bit worse than our former kicker and Brett Maher.
Shout out Blogging the Boys.
Absolutely, thank you very much for that stat, RJ Ochoa. But I mean, it's just bad coaching. It just is what it is. You have to put your offense and trust in your elite quarterback that you just paid to make that play over a guy who missed earlier on in our very first score.
An extra point.
Missed our extra point. You expect that guy to nail a 59-yarder, and while it did have the distance, it didn't have the accuracy. So I felt like it was just a bad coaching call.
I couldn't agree more. I would much rather have Dak in the offense on that field. Even without guys like CD and Amari, I still feel like we have enough playmakers to try and pick that up. But I mean, that's going to be a play that you kind of look back on and maybe if there was a different outcome there, maybe if that fumble in the first quarter, that was another one that we talked about. And then obviously the biggest one for me, this is going to go back to the, bad calls by the refs. But I think really one of the biggest plays that isn't going to get talked about is the holding call on Tyron Smith. Dak Prescott drops back, fires a bullet to Dalton Schultz. We score a touchdown. That was huge. It actually gets erased because of a holding call. The reason I have a problem with it is because I was seeing it happen all game pretty much between our line, and I also saw it happen to Micah Parsons a few times, so I was thinking that it wasn't going to get called on that particular play. And of course, like we saw the whole game, there was yellow on the floor. So that one was a tough pill to swallow as well, because we had to settle for a field goal. So that's a point swing that mattered at the end of the game. That's a rough call.
Definitely. I know we talk about, you can always play devil's advocate and say hindsight's 20/20. In these plays, I just, even if the outcomes were different, I don't think I agree with that, specifically with that 59-yard field goal. Even if he makes it, I'm still like, why didn't you put your offense out there? I think you're risking something. That's how you're putting something out there that's higher risk for a crappier reward.
Pretty much. And the fact that, I don't know how other Cowboys fans feel about Greg Zeurline. I feel like his reputation precedes him. I don't think he's ever going to be that guy that's Greg the Leg again. I think he's far removed from that. And a lot of Cowboys fans, he's lost us a couple of games this season from playing poorly in the kicking game. So is it time to have that conversation? Cowboys fans, tell us what you think.
Comment below your thoughts on Greg Zeurline in the kicker situation. What should we do? Should we keep him in? Should we trust this? Should we trust to bring this guy in the postseason and see what he can do with his leg based on what he's proved to us thus far? Let us know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think it's time to have that conversation. I don't know what y'all think. I want to know what y'all think. But for me, seeing the statistics that were put out saying that he's performing, if he isn't performing worse, he's performing around the same as Brett Maher, which we moved on from Maher because we felt like Zeurline was a huge, upgrade, and it's turning out that we're getting the same level of play. So it's nothing personal against Greg or anything like that. I don't think he's terrible, but we're trying to upgrade that position at all times, right? So I think it's time to have that conversation. But don't get misconstrued. I think that he's your kicker for the rest of this season. Come off season, that's a conversation I think you have to have.
Certainly. And moving on and switching gears here, to close up today's show, we're going to discuss a little bit of Micah Parsons. The man is just exceeding expectations in every form of that phrase. very, very clutch as they come. I know we talked a little bit.
He played very well late in the game.
Certainly gave us another chance to swing the momentum and get the ball back late in the fourth quarter. In overtime, I beg your pardon, with 6 minutes and 46 seconds left in overtime on 2nd and 11. He sacked Derek Carr, creating that 3rd and 18, which we know was success by that defensive PI for I forget how many yards it was, but it set him up for that walk-off field goal, which was inevitable at that point. But
the Raiders kicker has played really well. So the closer and closer they got, the less confidence I had. So yeah, that was a big one. And it's just fitting that a game with that many penalties is going to be decided with a call like that. And non-Cowboys fans are obviously going, you have to call it. He couldn't get his head around. But we saw it earlier in the game where he got called, even though he was running stride for stride with him. They got a little bit tangled up on the arms, but that's because they're both trying to make a play on the ball. He still got flagged. So regardless of what side of the fence you are on, regardless, I mean, you got to call it one way or the other.
You have to agree that it could have gone the other way. You have to.
I just think that maybe you should have left it as a no call. Like, did he really impede his progress? Because he's falling backwards and pulling Anthony Brown down on top of him. Look, this is an anomaly of a game. Despite what people are going to say about Anthony Brown, he has played well this season, and he's got a few interceptions. Maybe that's a byproduct of playing on the other side of Diggs, who's having a great season as well. But I mean, he is not. I think he had one or two flags this season so far, and just to get 4 in one game, I think it's just a bit of an anomaly. I don't think we're going to see that moving forward. So silver and blue lining.
Silver and blue lining for sure. Micah Parsons played out of his mind again. Definitely sealing the deal on defensive player of the year. I think one could definitely
rookie of the year.
Yes, and rookie of the year for sure. I think that one's definitely in the back.
I think that one's wrapped up.
But that's us being true blue Cowboys fans. Is there anything else that we want to include in this one before we wrap it up?
Well, Micah Parsons, he is becoming the DeMarcus Ware of this generation's Dallas team. The fact that he was making plays in overtime and in the fourth quarter to give us a chance, he was a large reason why we were able to get stops when we absolutely needed them. And that's when the best defensive players rise to the occasion when you absolutely have to have it, and they affect the quarterback in some way. They do bat the ball down, they get a sack, whatever it is. Seems like Micah Parsons is becoming that guy. And obviously we don't want to hype him up too much too quickly because he is very young. This is his first season. He's got a long ways to go, but the level that he's playing at is one of the best in the league right now. And I don't know how you could argue against that. He's playing and making plays when it matters. And I'm a huge fan. I'm glad he's on our team. I love his mentality. The guy just wants to eat. He's a beast.
Definitely a game changer. He brings the energy and makes his presence known on that defensive end. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it this far, we want to thank you for your time and attention and hope that you've learned something of value here in the last half hour. Smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and activate that bell button so that you can be the first to know when a new episode of Noise of the Boys podcast has dropped. And with that, we are out of here. Matt Long and Uncle C. Tom, and we will see each and every one of you for the pregame report.
Peace!